Mental retardation is not a tidy classification. Its causes are many. It is at once the most common and the most handicapping of all disorders. The degree of mental retardation varies widely. A retarded individual may have a damaged brain, impaired ability to think, to learn, to adapt to life, to perform the complicated or even the simple. There are thought to be 5 million people now living in the United States who are retarded, and many more who have never been properly diagnosed and are destined to function ineffectively throughout their lives. In years past, they would have been categorized feeble-minded, imbecile, idiot. But today, there is hope that they can live as participating members of the community if they are identified early and handled with care. Assisted by a full network of existing agencies, a mental retardation center can help to forge a meaningful chain of life situations for each retarded individual. The retarded can become participating members of society if they are given the opportunity and the incentive to thrive.
Yeah, that's my new Tesla. She's a beauty, real beauty. Best looking electric car out there. I mean, honestly, that Elon Musk, he's remarkable. Really a remarkable guy. I mean, let's save the planet, right? Let's save the planet. Wow, are you guys seeing this? Did you guys see what just happened? Elon Musk just successfully re-landed a rocket. This is historic. This is unbelievable. This is incredible. This guy's he's like a real life Iron Man. Yeah, Vladimir Putin is evil. He is an evil person. But did you see what Elon Musk did? Yeah, he helped send Starlink satellites over Ukraine so that the people in Ukraine could get internet. He's just such a good guy. I don't think we need to talk about Elon Musk, really. I mean, there's other topics of conversation we can have. I mean, the guy is advocating for free speech. Free speech! That is going to ruin our democracy. Ruin it! I hate Elon Musk. I hate him. I mean, there's normal hate, and then there's Elon Musk hate. I just think that there's other topics of conversation we can have. Okay?
That is fantastic. But I want to tell you this. We're gonna jump right in. Welcome everybody to the front line with Joe and Joe, because I want to piggyback, Joe. I want to springboard off the retarded clip, okay? To just take it to a whole new level, and everybody out there watching us is going to know exactly where I'm going with this.
Only citizens can vote for the United States Senate. Only citizens can vote for the presidency of the United States. So this extreme MAGA Republican voter suppression bill is not designed to solve any problem on behalf of the American people. It is designed to jam people up and prevent Americans from voting.
Now, case in point, because I think in that whole montage about the retards, okay, remember, I don't use the word retards to describe people who have Down syndrome. I use the word retards to describe people like that, like, because they're retarded. Their mental growth is stunted somewhere along the way, usually self-imposed. Hakeem Jeffries is perfect example of that, aside from everybody else in that clip. He's saying the extreme MAGA Republican bill wants to prevent American citizens from voting and in the meantime, we're going to vote against it because we want the American people to be able to vote. Joe, I just need help with this because it's too retarded for me.
Hakeem Jeffries, the only person he's talking about jamming up is the DNC machine, because they know they cannot win based upon their ideas. So what did they do? They imported 15 million people. And basically what this bill is being put forth, and he's speaking out against it, is you would have to show identification. That's an extreme bill. You have to show identification to register. So the person who's getting jammed up is the DNC machine. It has nothing to do with the people, because there's not a soul in America that has a social security number who can't vote, from Hawaii to Maine. So it's absolute and utter bullcrap. And if people can't see through this, because that was the plan the whole entire time, Joe, and it's unbelievable. That's not extreme. It's common sense. Do you realize that we went from a nation that voted 70% in person because of COVID? No, 30% through the mail used to be before COVID. Now it's 70, and it never changed. Give me an explanation for that. One, there is none. It's a bad control. It's got to change. There's nothing extreme about it except him. He's the extremist, and people have to see through it. This is key.
Well, we saw that just a couple of weeks ago with Trump's speech. Just how extreme, basically how extremely miserable they all are. These are miserable people, is what they are. Really, because they're not allowed to go full bore into having the United States government control 50% of our national income, which is really ultimately what their goal has always been. They want the government to control about 50% or so of national income. That was their stated goal back when Obama was elected, because we refuse to allow men to be called women and go into the ladies' room. All these things, like, they won't even back off a little bit. And when you push back with common sense things, Joe, like really common sense things, like a bill that requires that American citizens show an ID when they go to vote, really common sense things, when you push back, they just are miserable people.
Well,
like, they don't know how to function,
I'll take it a
Joe.
step further. They're sinister. You see, this is exactly what happened in Europe, how they took the country away from the UK, from Ireland, from France. This is the strategy. It's the same strategy. I can't win based upon my ideas because of the information that's being put forth on social media. People actually are now informed. So we have to bring voters in who basically go on the dole, and you're basically buying votes so you could have a one-party system. That was the goal. That's what happened in California, and that's exactly what they tried to do. Remember, there's 7 swing states that basically win by a margin of about 20,000 votes. You bring in 200,000 migrants who are on the dole, who will vote any which way. They'll vote for Daffy Duck because you're giving them money.
Right.
You have a one-party system forever. That was the strategy. And that's what he's talking about. Not a single media outlet, including Fox, says that. Not a single one. And that's the truth. Get it through your head. They're trying to steal your country from you.
Well,
he's sinister.
Well, ultimately, you got to remember something. Their goal is, their goal is to control the world. People used to say that, like people used to rant around a kitchen table, which is really what we do. But we have truth behind us, and we base our what we say on what's out there, what we've heard, what people say. All right, people say, the elitists and everything, they just want to run things, they want to run industry, they want to control the world. Isn't it true? I mean, we're going to talk tonight here at the front line with Joe and Joe. We're going to talk about digital currency. We're going to talk about perhaps taking down the electric grid in Europe. What if they did that here? I mean, how effed would we all be? I mean, a liberal who can't eat, who votes for this nonsense, they're not going to be able to eat either. Okay? So what are they going to do? Say, we got you, MAGA people. You're starving too if they drop the hammer on the power grid. You're starving too if they go to a digital currency. Why? Because you think you vote the right way? Soon as they get their way, when things get a little tough, you know who's going to starve and die? You, Mr. Liberal, who votes for this nonsense. We just need a little bit more common sense. You know what's common sense in Washington is lacking. We're gonna play you something, Joe, and then we're gonna come back and be a little bit critical of Orange Man for a second. Okay, I know that's shocking to everybody out there.
Well, let me give a little bit of background. I know President Trump personally for a good number of years. Know Thomas Massie personally for a good number of years. If we had 537 elected officials in Washington, D.C., like Thomas Massie, a lot of the challenges we face as a country would be solved. Congressman Massey is smart as a whip. He understands public policy and the cascading effects. He's honest. He's principled. And unfortunately, we've got a president who, quite frankly, in my judgment at least, does none of those things. And so you put those two together, and politically speaking, it's like gasoline and matches. And you know how Donald Trump likes to play with matches.
Now, we're not going to beat up on Donald Trump. And Mo Brooks makes a point. I don't like that he said that Donald Trump is like, he was kind of being a little bit of insulting. But here's where I pause on Donald Trump. If we had Thomas Massey in the Oval Office, this country would change like that. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Trump because Trump is up against a juggernaut of people who just detest him. But then again, if Thomas Massey ran
they
for
would
president,
detest him too.
they would detest him too. So let's be fair to Trump. But here's what I don't like. Thomas Massey is principled. Thomas Massey does not want to add one dime to the deficit. Not one dime. Joe and Joe don't want to add one dime to the deficit. Tens of millions of people out there do not want to add one dime to the deficit. And what does Donald? He does two things, Joe, and then I'm going to throw it over to you. What does Donald Trump do? First thing is he's applauding this continuing resolution that it still has a deficit. That adds to the deficit and doesn't get to zero for 5 years after Trump is out of office. Donald, wrong. You need to drop you're telling us that Doge is finding all this money, and then you're saying that we still have to run a deficit? So I'm a little skeptical about what's coming out of your administration right now, starting to feel a little deflated. That's number one. And number two, President Trump, don't attack Thomas Massey, because if you had his ideas flowing through your administration, truly his ideas, okay, you would be a lot better off. Don't say that he needs to be primaried. He's one of the only real conservatives in the House of Representatives. Because Trump went on, Joe, I don't know if you noticed, he went on social media, or he wrote a letter, and he said that Massey needs to be primary. John Thune needs to be primary, as far as I'm concerned. John Cornyn needs to be primary. Two guys over in the Senate and others in the House. Those are the guys that need to be primary. Joe, what do you say?
Well, just to give a little background, they're talking about the spending bill. It passed the House. From what I hear, tomorrow it goes to the Senate, and the Senate, the Democratic leaders in the Senate are not, because they need 60 votes. They need some Democratic votes. They're not going to pass it. The government is going to freeze. Charles Schumer is on his soapbox. He has, all of a sudden, flipped a lot of the same policies that they were for. Same policies are moving forward. Some of them, not all of them, that are in this particular bill. He's against it because anything Donald Trump touches is poison. That's point number one. Point number two, the deficit is what's going to crush America. And it's a runaway train that both the Republicans and the Democrats have been fueling for decades. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the U.S. dollar rules. And as long as it rules, the debt doesn't mean anything. It's monopoly money. It's the dominant currency in the world. And that's what Donald Trump is betting on. He's saying it's going to continue to be the dominant currency, so I can run a deficit. Same with Biden, same with Clinton, same with Bush. And this has been going on for decades. But here's the deal. China is catching up. BRICS is getting stronger. The second that the dollar drops and gets devalued and is no longer the currency in the world, the dominant currency, it's no longer monopoly money. We have to pay up, and America goes bust. America goes broke. And that's what Thomas Massey is trying to stop from happening. He's basically saying, listen, this is not going to go on forever. The more debt that we basically take on eventually is going to sink the ship. It may not be tomorrow. It may not be 5 years from now, but it's going to happen to my grandkids. And I'm a responsible person with a conscience, and I don't want that to happen. But no one says that. Not one Republican voted against it. And frankly, the only person, Kentucky's the only state, it's Paul Rand Paul in the Senate is clogging it up. It's not going to pass. He too is fiscally conservative. It is the thing that will sink America. It is the thing that sunk the USSR. They had a stagnant economy, and they overextended themselves with their military. Sound familiar, people? That's
Well,
exactly what's been happening in America, and that's what's going to sink this country. Massey's trying to stop it, and Trump is continuing with the runaway train.
I don't know why, but here's the thing: is like, who's lying to us? Because they're coming out. Maybe I'm believing the press coming out of the White House. I want to believe Catherine Levitt, is that her name? Catherine Levitt, the press secretary.
I don't even know. I know what she looks like.
They're telling the
blonde-headed
truth.
woman.
Yeah, that they're telling the truth and all that. Doge is finding this. Doge is finding that. Donald Trump gets up, gives a speech, talks about we're going to save billions, perhaps trillions of dollars. Then why are you running a deficit? Why are you behind this particular resolution that's going to add to the deficit, as Thomas Massey has pointed out? Why are you doing that, Donald? See, the thing is, he takes advantage of us too. He took advantage of Catholics during the campaign when he pushed to the left on abortion, and then he went out there and he championed IVF. And we're all sitting there going, do you really just have to be that vocal about it? We know you're not going to do anything about it, but you have to rub our faces in it. And now it's like he's rubbing our faces in this bill. Thomas Massey is the one that needs to get primaried when he's the only one who's actually looking out for Joe, and the rest of the people out there to say, no, the deficit stops now. And then we get to that point. Then we talk about how we're going to continually reduce spending, or in a meaningful way, to start paying down debt. Like you said, Joe, not for nothing, I'm going to say something that's going to sound controversial, and I'm not advocating for it. This is what causes revolutions. In other words, and what I mean by that is this: it won't be us, might be our kids. When they're starving, okay, and the left is not going to take away people's guns, this is when people pick up guns, because they're like, you've had all this debt, and you've done nothing but kick the can. Forget about me. I'm an old man. You're old. Well, you're not an old man, but we're both in our 50s. We're middle age. All right. But I'll be dead before this crap hits the fan, probably. But my son, your kids, they got to go through this. This is what angers people. And I thought Trump was on our side. I really did. I thought he was on our side with this.
You know what it is? I think in order to be fiscally conservative, you have to be willing to take a step back, to take 2 steps forward. And no one's willing to do that because it'll impact their presidency. That's what I think. That's my opinion. I'm not an economist, but when you have to like take a step back to say, save money, you can't eat steak every night. You may have to cut your budget. You may have to cut your programs. Your ideas get limited, and no one's willing to do that. So they keep betting on the roulette wheel that basically the currency is still going to be the top dog in the world. But if you look at the trend, I'm not saying that that's going to happen tomorrow. It may not happen for 50 years, but eventually it will. And then someone is going to say, you got to pay up. Time to pay up. And what we're going to say as a nation is we don't have the money. So it's going to cause a massive depression. It will be a tidal wave around the world. Power will absolutely flip. China will then be the top dog in the world. And basically they will do what we have done. Subject people to basically their will. That's what America has done for the last 100 years, all over the world. Toppled governments through frigging coups, basically used extortion to push absurd ideas. We just saw that with US aid, some of those ideas. We've been doing that for decades. And then China will do that. And then we are no longer free. The American dream dies because America could not control its spending. This is the thing that will sink this country eventually. And Donald Trump's contributing to it. He contributed to it in his first term, and he's doing it again.
He called it a golden age. He got me excited in this speech. He's talking about a golden age and everything else. Donald, you're off on the wrong. You're starting off on the wrong foot. If you're trying to usher in a golden age, Thomas Massey's right, and then we'll put a finer point on it. You gotta control the deficit now. That should be an easy one. You don't spend more than you take in. Kind of simple. It's a simple concept. That means the military gets cut. That means Social Security. How come we haven't heard? Joe, I don't want to spend too much time on this, all right? Because I'm quite frankly not feeling well, and I want to keep it moving. But let me say this. They come out with a report. Between the ages of, there's millions of people receiving Social Security between the ages of 100 and 150 years old, okay? It's an outrage. Everybody is rightfully outraged, all right? How come we haven't heard about it since? How come there isn't a massive announcement that Doge went in there, applied Big Bull's technology to it? Okay, that's his guy, right? His name, his nickname. Okay, apply the system to it. Find the 50, 10 million, 20 million people are on Social Security, and stop paying dead people. Like these are things where Trump drops the ball all the time. He's finding all these things. We get us excited because we know the fraud, waste, and abuse is there, and yet he knows it's all there. You have uncovering what I just described in Social Security, and then you do nothing about it. Joe, I got to give you the final word because I'm getting aggravated.
Like I said, this is a danger. Thomas Massie is a good man. Everything that guy said about Massie, if we had all our representatives like this man, he has an MIT engineering degree and he's honest. He's rich. He made tons of money on his own. He created a business and then he moved back to Kentucky. This is exactly the type of guy that we should have in both the RNC and the DNC. This is the model.
You're not going to find him, and you're not going to find.
No, but I'm just saying, in terms of people who are basically like, I have a skill set, I don't need to do this job. I got news for you. If Trump is successful, I don't think he will be because he has like 70% approval rating in his state. If he was successful and pushed Thomas Massie out, Thomas Massie doesn't miss a beat. He'll be rich. He'll make another tens of millions of dollars. He doesn't need this. He's doing this because he has something to give. And that's what a public servant is supposed to be. And ultimately, he's right. And he has the character to go against his party. You need more people like that. It's too much party think. You're going to tell me not one Republican doesn't agree with him, but they didn't vote with him. Know why? Because the system still is rigged. For that reason, it's identity. If you don't go along, you don't get money. And if you don't get money, you don't win. And that is how it works. And that's why no one voted with him. And that is why our system is broken.
And that's why we have to figure out a way to hold Trump's feet to the fire. But I'll tell you something. You talk about people who are just like, they're just off the deep end. Love or hate Donald Trump and all my criticism and everything else and what Elon Musk is doing, still going to be better for the country. Don't get me wrong. Than the other wackos, because look, this is what we're dealing with.
Not another billionaire. We need not another billionaire. Everybody out, bring it out over here.
We need clean air, not another billionaire. 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 We need clean air, not another billionaire.
So you get the idea. I haven't mentioned his name in a while, okay? But I think the people out there listening to us at the front line with Joe and Joe know where I'm going with this, okay? Remember Captain McCluskey from The Godfather? All right, Captain McCluskey, as Robert Duvall said, I found out about this Captain McCluskey that broke Mike's jaw. All right, I want those cops in that clip who were doing a fantastic job with those, let's call them crazy people. I don't want to be too insulting, all right? I want McCluskey and about 50 guys like McCluskey clearing out the Tesla headquarters there in New York and dragging these people out and doing to them what he did to Michael Corleone. And I'm being serious. Joe, you're not entitled to wreck another person's property for any reason simply because you disagree with their politics. You're not allowed to. And the fact that these people are vandalizing, they poured some sort of a substance on one of the robots. They're attacking Tesla dealerships. Vandalizing them, Joe, jail. And I don't mean like some sort of like wishy-washy jail. Jail's where they need to go. And if you do it in New York, you need to go to Rikers. That's where you need to go. And I'm being serious because these guys are all there. You don't get to do what you want to do. And that's why, see, when you're dealing with a guy like McCluskey, you know what you do? You think twice. That's why I brought him up.
Everyone complained about January 6th. January 6th was a disgrace, if you ask me. It was like a fraternity stunt. It should never have happened. It should never have happened. Now, obviously, the Democrats tried to hang their hat on that for months and months and months, and it did not work. People were not interested in it. However, take note, after that event, for 4 years, many Americans, many large swaths, millions were very upset with the Biden administration. And I'm being kind by saying very upset. There was not one instance, not one that looked like that. We have not even gone 6 months, and they've been many. So that is point one. Not one single instance. And they said, oh, they're terrorists, they're this, they're that. I didn't see it. And frankly, I was very upset with what I saw from the Biden administration. Every single one of those people, to your point, need to get arrested. Point two, Joe Biden put people who protested at abortion clinics, priest, Father Fidelis from New York City, in jail.
And Father Nix is jammed up too, from what I understand.
A priest protesting to save the life of children. And he didn't hurt anybody. He didn't break anything. Those people should be put in prison too. And the fact that you think that you could break things, cause harm, is a sickness. And I'm going to be honest with you. This is why this country, if you ask me, is doomed outside of a direct hand from God. There are too many people who are thinking. I hear it sometimes on the internet. I sometimes see clips. Joe, I swear, I can't even believe it. I'm like, I can't even believe this would come out of somebody's mouth. I can't even believe that someone would do this. But here we are, and it's not an isolated incident here or there. They need to go to jail. There needs to be strict penalties. You get to protest. It's part of who we are as a nation. You don't get to hurt anyone. You don't get to break anything. And if you do, you go to jail.
Right.
It's that simple.
And the thing is too, with that clip we just showed, Joe, this goes beyond. See, Father Fidelis and Father Nix. I think that's who I was trying to tell you. Father Nix, I think, is also,
yes, correct. They're on trial, I think, soon.
Yeah, they're on trial, and it's a shame because see, they'll go into the lobby of Planned Parenthood and they'll speak to a woman who's about to go in and kill her baby and try to tell them, you are loved. You're loved by God. You have a lot of support. We can help you. You don't have to do this. See, they are technically and legally trespassing, but if you want to say according to the law, but in reality, all right, what are they really doing? They're just sitting down in the lobby and they're having a conversation. They're really not harming anyone.
But they're not breaking anything. And frankly, listen, it's civil disobedience. You're right. It is breaking the law, and you do something like that, you can get arrested, and they did. The difference is they didn't break anything. They didn't hurt anybody. That's a huge difference.
It's an enormous difference. And that's my point to you about the double standard in the law. I mean, again, we were told we got to support Trump's cabinet and Pam Bondi, and she's going to come in. And, all right, Pam, this is an important issue. If you're going into a Tesla and you're wrecking things, you're breaking things, then you have to go to jail the same way Father Fidelis and Father Nix are in danger of going to jail. They must be prosecuted. You have to step in from the federal government and you have to prosecute them. I don't care what you have to do, what legal loopholes, hula hoops you have to jump through. Because people who we actually know, like Father Fidelis, are about to go to jail. But you're going to let these people just do whatever they want?
And dude, do you see some of these people? Dude, they're deranged.
Oh, listen.
I mean, Joe, it's just like, dude, it's like a brain virus, dude. They're deranged.
Rosaries for these people. These people are so far off the deep end, they don't know what reality is.
Oh,
I just watched a clip of a beautiful girl who works at a spa in San Francisco, and she's trying to explain to these two homosexual radicals, okay, that and you don't see their faces, you just see what they're doing to her. I'm just giving you an example. And she's being very pleasant, very pleasant. She goes, our policy is that if you have male genitalia, you go in the men's room. If you have female genitalia, you go in the ladies' room. And these two punks, because that's what they are, they're two homosexual punks, that if guys like us were standing there, they would have never done that. Never, ever, ever would they have done that. They would picked on this girl who, by the way, looked like she was from another country. That's another thing, too. So they were being somewhat racist as far as I'm concerned. But if you listen to the video, and the reason why I'm bringing it up, Joe, is that they're so detached from reality that this girl who's just trying to say, look, if you have the thing down there, you go over there. If you don't, you go. That means you're a woman. You go over there. It was very, very matter of fact. And my larger point is that those two in that video, these people that are destroying Teslas and all across this country, when is somebody going to step in and say, do it again? There's going to be a problem. Next time you get
arrested. I mean, it comes right down to it. Joe, you nailed it on the head. There's strict penalties. You get a $10,000 fine. That's it. You want to do it again? You get another $10,000 fine. You'll stop. Like that's the type of stuff that has to happen. You don't get to break stuff. You don't get to hurt people. And if you do, you're going to jail. Like you said, you do a year in jail. Fine. You want to come back? You get 2 years. You want to come back? You get 5. And that's like what the judge has to say.
Listen, these people.
Up. Sometimes you don't get your way in life. I had to endure 12 years of Barack Obama. 12. I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't break anything. And frankly, that is pretty much what most of the people that were not liking what Barack Obama was having to do or say in this country. You didn't see that. You simply didn't. And again, they're the first ones to wave the January 6th flag, but yet there have been more than a few instances. For crying out loud, Joe, they took 2 shots at the president.
Right.
You didn't see that out of the RNC, and I'm not making them out to be angels either. You simply didn't.
Look, there were bad actors on January 6th, but the bottom line is we all know, number one, it was a put-up job. But number two, talk about the selfishness of the representatives, too, the members of the House and Senate. What about all the innocent people in Seattle and the other places that burned down because of Black Lives Matter, where real people died? Now, Ashley Babbitt died, okay, and that one officer had a heart attack, and I know there's a dispute over whether or not it was J6 that caused his heart attack. Ashley Babbitt got killed by a Capitol Police officer, okay? So she died. But when you look at the violence, and again, we know, I think you're right when you call it a fiasco. It was like a big fiasco, orchestrated, by the way, by the deep state. Don't care what anybody says. That's a stone cold fact. People sat in prison for 3 years. What about BLM? You gave all you scumbag hypocrites with your double standards. BLM got a pass. Antifa got a pass. They actually killed people.
Kamala Harris was bailing people out.
Right. And the mayor of, I forgot what town, turned around and said, we have to give the protesters, we have to give them their space. F you, you're the mayor of everybody in that town. What do you mean give them their space? Send in the cops and shut them down, woman.
Waltz allowed his city to get burned to the ground. Minneapolis will not be the same for decades. Just like New York.
Joe, I hope none of the cities come back. I hope the people who think like us and have our heads on straight, I hope they leave. I hope they suck it up. I know it's going to be a lot of pain and suffering. I hope they leave New York, leave Chicago, leave these places. Just leave them and let them be ruins of a past time that's never coming back. We should get more rural in this country. People should move out more and get away from these cities. And then let the animals just have it. And the ones that want to control those animals, like Tim Walz, like Kamala Harris and everybody else. And everybody out there who might listen to this, he called all those black people animals. No, I'm not. If you are in favor of what happened in all these cities during COVID and afterwards, you are an animal. I don't give a shit what color you are. You are an animal. But here's the thing. I got to pivot because we got to go a couple places around the world before I'm going to be like the Wicked Witch of the West. I'm melting because I'm so sick today. But Joe and Joe has to get done. Then we must go into the breach. So you're going to have to educate me on what's going on in Canada.
It's the morning after the Liberal leadership, Mark Carney's victory, and it's a gorgeous day here in Toronto. Just keeping an eye on my dog over there, out walking Chloe now that it's finally nice again. What to say about Carney's victory? Pretty decisive for an internal party issue. It's 85.9% of the vote. We'll give him 86, crushing for Chrystia Freeland, just 8%. I mean, would she even stick around at that point? The party has firmly rejected her. But on this media narrative that it's a really close race between Poilievre and Carney, not at this point, not when you look at the actual results. He is closing the gap, absolutely. You can probably expect a bit more than that, but look at the post on X that I had up. Most recent Leger poll, they asked on the issues, Trump, affordability, inflation. Who understands people like me? Pierre led on all of them. That's close, but he led on all of them. And if you're leading on all the issues, you're in a really good space. So look, it's going to be a much different campaign than if it was Pierre Poilievre versus Justin Trudeau. But this is not the slam dunk that my media colleagues are trying to make you believe. It's like they're trying to create a narrative that isn't there. At best, it's a 13-point lead that the Conservatives have over Carney and the Liberals. At worst, it's about an 8-point gap. That's still majority territory for Pierre and the Conservatives. So keep that in mind as you're watching everything going on, all the discussions.
So what are your thoughts? Because I'm not too familiar with the process. My understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, and stick around later on, everybody, because when Joe and I are done, we're going to play a clip from Jordan Peterson talking. Doesn't he talk about Carney?
Correct.
And that talks about Carney. So give you a little bit more info on him. Where do the Conservatives stand right now in Canada, Joe Russino?
Well, what he's basically saying, and I hope he's right, is that Pierre Poilievre could win because now they have to vote. Canada has.
When is that? When is that?
That I don't know specifically. I do know that Canada has a parliamentary system, and basically this guy, Mark Carney, got dropped in to the PM slot. Justin Trudeau resigned, Mark Carney drops in, and at this point, no one voted for him, and he's in control of all the levers of power. What this guy's saying is, even though obviously the press is drumming Mark Carney to no end because the Canadian press is in the bag, and there's not a person on earth that's going to tell me otherwise because it's absolutely a fact, he's saying that Pierre Poilievre, and when I heard this was actually reassuring because it basically says that they have a chance in hell. Because if Mark Carney is the friggin' PM for another 9 years on top of what Justin Trudeau just did to your country, you're finished. So what this guy is basically saying is, listen, don't get caught up in the mainstream media. Pierre Poilievre is ahead, and if things continue, he will win. I hope he's right for your sake. I know we have a lot of Canadians in the chat. From this guy's mouth to God's ears.
Well, the thing is, too, and what's hopeful is that Pierre Poilievre is leading on all the issues. So as far as that's concerned, those polls mean something as long as Canada is going to have an election that's honest.
Well, there's that, but also it's the press. I mean, like, you think our press is bad. I mean, the Canadian press is horrible. As it is across the whole world. There is no such thing as free press. The free press is social media. You got to get your information from social media, and you have to pick and choose it. That's why it's there. And Canada is drumming Mark Carney, and they are utter and absolute globalists, and Carney is not hiding anything as far as what he wants to do. He is going to pummel you. He's going to particularly pummel Alberta because he's anti-oil and gas. Alberta will get crushed under Mark Carney.
Can you imagine having a country, just take like Canada, right? Or many places in the world. America, we have an abundance of oil also. But can you imagine a place like Canada not producing oil, that when you produce that oil, you're allowing the people of your own country to thrive? All in favor of this hoax, Mr. Carney, that is a hoax. You're not fooling anybody by talking about, 99% of the world science. It's all BS. We all know it. It's all been exposed, particularly because of social media, and especially because every time somebody wants a real debate on so-called climate change, you people run for the hills. So, Joe, I've told you this before. As soon as somebody says, no, we don't debate that, there is no debate on that. The debate's over on that. That's when you know that that's the thing that needs to be debated. When they say we're not debating climate change, it's a fact. No, that's what, like when they say we're not debating evolution, it's a fact. No, the reason why you don't want to debate it is because you don't want alternative ideas getting out to the larger public, especially through new media and social media. All right. And especially with climate change, I would cry, and I'm being serious. Like if I saw Canada not able to produce the oil, the God-given oil that's under their feet, okay, because of a guy like Mark Carney and these other globalists, I mean, that would be a pretty sad day. But hey, listen, when you're talking to globalists, it's all pretty dangerous.
On your second point, I tend to share your views. Nature doesn't like vacuum. And we started working on the digital euro way back. Actually, when I started my term 5.5 years ago. And I'm not claiming, parentality on the digital euro, because my colleague Benoît Cœuré had already committed a speech on this matter before I arrived. But I certainly carried on with that project, and subsequently Fabio Panetta on the board, and then Piero Cipollone, who has replaced Fabio, have taken the lead together with a very, very good team, which is focused on accelerating the pace and hopefully campaigning enough with all the stakeholders, meaning European Parliament, meaning European Council, meaning European Commission, so that we can eventually, not put to bed, but put to reality this digital euro. The deadline for us is going to be October of 25, and we are getting ready for that deadline, but we will not be able to move unless the other parties, the stakeholders, as I call them, Commission, Council, and Parliament, actually complete the legislative process, without which we will not be able to move. And I think it is
the legislative process without which we won't be able to move. But the legislative process in Europe is completely corrupted in the same way it's corrupted here. The way we started this conversation about 43 minutes ago, talking about Thomas Massie and the corruption in the American House, in the American Senate. Joe, you heard what she just said. If they get a digital currency in Europe,
it's over. Party's over.
See, this is why. Go ahead, over. Please.
Basically, she just said it. October 2025, and they're going to do it. They have the power, the levers of power. They're going to do it, which means that is the ultimate tool of control. Why? We saw what happened in Canada with the truckers. You get out of line, they freeze your money.
Yep.
They freeze your money with one button. You have no money, and there's no phone call. There's no way to fix it. You have no money, so you do what you're told. That is what the digital currency is all about. It's a means of control, which means if that happens in Europe and Mark Carney is your PM, the likelihood that he adopts that is very high. I would bet money that he does the same thing. And if America was to have had Kamala Harris, that is exactly what would have been pushed here. They would sell it to people. They would think it's great, and then you're controlled. They could see what you buy. They could see how you vote. They could control you in a million different ways. And basically, if you don't do what you're told, you have no money, nothing. You don't eat. You starve to death. And that is what that is all about. That is what that is all about, because they know that the people are not for this net zero model, which is destroying regular people. So they have to coerce them. They have to coerce them. This is the atomic bomb of coercion. Right. But that is exactly why the West is dead. Europe is dead. It's gone. It is dead. There's nothing to conserve because there's nothing there that's alive.
Let me tell you something. You know what would be a controversial thing for Trump to do, but at the end could be a genius move. Trump should pull out of NATO. If the Europeans do this, he should declare all the entire EU enemies of the United States of America, especially if they try to import it here, and we should create an alliance with Putin. If you want the truth of the matter, if you want to talk about real balls, Joe, if it's to tell them, because I don't know if Russia's going along with.
No, I wouldn't put an alliance with Putin. Putin's not is not. I mean, I'll be truthful with you. He's not a good guy. I mean, but there are people to have an alliance with: Hungary, Poland, Argentina.
I agree with you. I know what you're saying. Okay, let me put my cards on the table, Joe. I'll take Putin over Macron. I'll take Putin over Starmer. I'll take Putin over who the other guy running Germany. I'll take Putin. I'll take Putin every day of the week and twice on Sunday over Zelensky. Okay? But I'm with you. Donald Trump should seek to create new alliances that anybody who's going to try this new world order BS and impose that on us, those nations, just like you said, Viktor Orban does that. The dude in Argentina, okay, Millet, and others that are out there. Okay?
Italy, Argentina, these are countries that are thinking like we do. The rhetoric, it's the same rhetoric. Europe is no longer, JD Vance called them out. They're not on the same page as America anymore. They don't believe in free speech. Yeah. Europe does not believe in free speech. Europe has banned, the EU has banned the Hallow app, which is a Catholic means of prayer. So did China. The EU banned it. Right. They're not on the same page as we are.
Then why do we maintain that there's this friendship between us? We're European descent, Joe. We're from Italy. Now again, Italy's actually under Meloni acting somewhat proper. But leaving that aside, I have no ties to Europe. I'm an American. Okay, our parents are Americans. Our kids are Americans. Okay, I don't have any sort of nostalgia.
No, I agree, Joe. I'll tell you what, the ties are cracking. I mean, the beginning of it was that speech that J.D. Vance gave in Germany. That's the beginning. This is a 4-year term, and keep this in mind. J.D. Vance could very easily become the next president of the United States. That's 12 years. So I got news for you. If they continue down this road, they're not going to get our funds. NATO is basically a shell of what it is anyway. And frankly, they caused a massive world conflict. And we could argue about that, not you and I, but like with people till the ends of the day. I mean, this Ukraine thing didn't just happen 3 years ago. This has been going on all the way back to Clinton, and they kept pushing the line, pushing Putin. And Putin's not innocent either, and this is not a cut and dry conversation. But NATO is clearly not innocent. So my point is, we don't share the same values with these people. We may share the same values with the people of Europe, but as far as the leadership goes, absolutely not. And the EU is a disaster. It has been a disaster.
Oh, look at what's happened in England. I mean, you talk about the rampant migration of Muslims into England, and you're right. The people of England are not for this, but then they're thrown in jail. Okay, there's people that have been thrown in jail in England for just simply saying we have to do something about immigration. This is an enlightened society. This is the society that represents Western civilization. If you talk about all the European nations, certainly doesn't look like it did 500 years ago when the Catholic Church ran things. Okay, because they're on this. Well, here's the thing: they're on this suicide track. They think that they're going to crush Western civilization. They might crush European Western civilization. They're not going to crush our Western civilization, okay, as far as America is concerned, especially if good people in America continue to fight the good fight.
Joe, I'm glad you brought that up, but if if Hakeem Jeffries gets his way, we started the show with that. That's exactly that was the model to destroy Western civilization in America. It was by bringing in 15 million people and allowing them to vote. And he's basically complaining about a common sense regulation that says if you register to vote, you got to show ID. There's nothing radical about that, Hakeem. Not at all. And Americans can register and Americans can vote. That is absolute bullcrap.
I wonder how, if you have ID under the new regime, this electronic regime, if they're saying that you don't have to show an ID, well, how are you going to know who I voted for, Mr. Jeffries? You know what I mean? Like, it's so confusing is my point. But here's the thing. It's not just the digital currency, all right? Because listen, the WEF, Joe, I got to ask you a question. Is the devil so tempting that he can make people sell out their own country, their own, their own civilization? Because if you look at, let's say, what Klaus Schwab and Soros and the rest of them are doing, the way they've corrupted American politicians, we all know it because we see district attorneys like Alvin Bragg and others are all Soros puppets. How much money do you have to get paid to sell out your country? I think you know where I'm going.
They do get paid. And our legislators get rich as a result of them representing people. Many of them go in with nothing, come out with millions. That's a fact. But Joe, they're not moored in anything. And it's a religion. This is their religion. It's a cult. They
Right.
say that the MAGA movement is cult-ish. Well, to a degree, they're right. Yes, there are people that get a little carried away with it. With that said, though, this ideology, it's their religion. It's a religion, Joe. Just like you and I are Catholic, this is their religion. They actually, some people actually believe they're saving the world. They're saving the world through basically net zero carbon. And you can't tell them anything. It's like
Right.
you and I, someone telling you that there isn't three people in the Trinity. To them, that is their God. This is their religion. It's cult thinking. They don't, and that's all they see. And frankly, it's sad.
Well,
It's
it's
nothing
also
short of sad.
it's also very dangerous. I mean, here, I'll play this. I trust Candace Owens.
What would you do if they brought the power grid down? And by they, I mean if the government purposefully brought the power grid down. And I'm not asking that question for fun. I'm asking that question because the World Economic Forum is predicting that a cyber pandemic, you can look this up, they've been running exercises about it this year, is inevitable. You're probably saying, what is a cyber pandemic? It doesn't make any sense. Like, what are we even talking about? Well, first and foremost, the reason I'm even paying attention to the World Economic Forum and their exercises is because they notoriously, in 2019, ran an exercise for a coronavirus pandemic that oddly all became true. I mean, without one slight difference, they said that the coronavirus was going to escape from a wet market in South America. Of course, when the coronavirus swept the world in 2020, they said that it escaped from a wet market in China. You can still look that up, by the way. That's not a conspiracy theory. They simulated that coronavirus pandemic. It was the World Economic Forum in collaboration with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, in collaboration with Johns Hopkins University. And the website is still up, and they say, the coronavirus pandemic is inevitable. And then boom, it happened the very next year. So people say it's a conspiracy theory to believe that they knew that the coronavirus pandemic was going to happen. You don't have to believe it was a conspiracy theory, or you can believe it wasn't a conspiracy theory. It's up to you. I don't really care. The point is that they made the prediction, they called it inevitable, and then it happened immediately. So for me personally, that signals to me that I should probably pay attention the next time the World Economic Forum makes a prediction and calls it inevitable. And lo and behold, they are predicting that a coronavirus pandemic, a cyber pandemic, is going to happen, and that it is once again inevitable. So if you look into the exercise that they have run this year, I believe they ran it in July. They've been meeting and talking about the cyber pandemic, what it would look like. Essentially, their idea is that they're going to have to sanitize the internet because a bug, think of it as like a coronavirus for your computer, is going to sweep globally. And the only way they're going to be able to stop this bug from infecting everything is to effectively shut down the internet, right? And they were talking about bringing down the power grid in an effort to do this. So imagine the government bringing down the power grid, and you would not have access to anything that required an electrical charge.
I mean, why would we be shocked? Like, if we think about what Candace Owens is saying there, she's right. They broadcast, they telegraphed it. They're like, the difference between them and a bad boxer. See, a bad boxer telegraphs his punches, and a good boxer is able to maneuver, okay? These people telegraph their punches, and Joe, they land them. They land them hard. Because if you think of what they did to humanity, think about this. Don't think of COVID, let's say, in a not that you do. Think of COVID as far as, I'm talking about the way the Dr. Evils of the world and Goldfinger and Blofeld, like they're caricatured in movies, James Bond, and in a funny way in Austin Powers and things like that. But Joe, that's what Klaus Schwab is. That's what George Soros is. They're very rich people that think very little, if anything, about humanity. They don't care about humanity. They simply want other people to exist so that those people could go out and serve them, and they want everybody else to die. I mean, it's really not shocking. It's really not shocking. And I do not put it past them to pull a move like this.
Well, ultimately, we talked about digital currency, a means of control. The internet is a means of control, and they know that. So we should pay attention to what is coming out of the World Economic Forum. I do. because they're the most powerful people in the world. And to your point, they say some things that are frankly horrifying. I've heard them out of their own mouths, like the population of the globe should only be 500 million people. What happens to the other 8.5 billion? And who are the ones that should disappear? Now, they don't say they should disappear, but they basically say we have too many people. And there should only be about 500 million people on the earth. I've heard that out of their own mouth. What she's basically saying is this is a means of control. They know that people cannot be informed. We have to control the narrative. It's a means of control. And what is that means of control? The internet. So some way, somehow, we have to filter it, whether it's a bug, whether it's a power grid, but it has to be filtered, just like the news is filtered through a producer, through an owner of a newspaper. Same thing, same idea. It's just a way to articulate it, because people can't know what's going on, because if they do, they will not go along. And that is not what it's about, because they are oligarchs and they are trying to usher in a 21st century version of feudalism. It's nothing more than a 21st century version of feudalism. They will have everything. You will have nothing. And they're succeeding because Europe is gone and Canada is close behind. If Mark Carney gets in, you're finished. It's over. And if the American people get brainwashed by our own media and vote in a secular humanist who's also a globalist, we're finished too. One party system. It's over.
Well,
Western democracy is over.
Well, let's hope there's enough people out there, Joe Rossinello, who are willing to fight and open their mouths, fight against all this nonsense. We're trying to do our part. And listen, wherever you see Joe and I, wherever you're watching this, help us out, like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Remember, we're going live Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern time, or at least doing our best to do so, and trying to hash a few things out. Hang around for about 2 minutes. We're going to leave you with Jordan Peterson on the way out. We'll see you next week. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.
Inevitable grand poobah of the currently wretched but still dangerously powerful liberals, one Mark Carney, is one of the world's prime advocates of the insane inanities of net zero. He is a man who has planned in writing, not least in his best-selling book, Values, the complete destruction of the fossil fuel industry. Bye-bye, Alberta, if that's not bad enough. And it is. He's also simultaneously an advocate of the same post-national view of Canada defined by Trudeau Jr. and his moralistic minions. What are we, according to such good thinkers? Nothing. But if anything, the oppressive, patriarchal, white, supremacist, identityless, colonial settler state defined by the progressive ideologues in the think tanks and elite dining rooms in Eastern Canada and the protest encampments on the campuses of Canadian universities. None of this fills the MAGA crowd with admiration, in case it needs to be said. None of it bodes well either for the economy of Canada, doomed to replacement, according to Carney, by the hydrogen, solar, and wind power that either does not exist, that would be hydrogen, or that would doom Canadians to starve and freeze in the dark if it ever came to replace the reliable grid and transportation we also desperately depend on when it's 40 bloody below. We may, when arguing so expensively and incompetently with the Americans, continue to congratulate ourselves on our comparative righteousness. That diet will become even thinner gruel, however, in a future characterized by their explosive economic growth and our rapid descent toward comparative poverty and irrelevance, green though that pathway may be argued, however falsely to be. Carney, to put it bluntly, is not a man like Justin Trudeau, a second-rater, under the mere influence of the World Economic Forum, that Malthusian fear-mongering cabal of authoritarian elitists, drunk on the fumes of their own self-righteous delusions. He is, by contrast, a veritable leader of that movement, an organizer par excellence of ESG, stakeholder capitalism, diversity, equity, and inclusiveness, and degrowth. Out with the old, the Liberals claim, and in with the new. But the new will be everything Trudeau so terribly was, but a lot more efficiently.